The most feared warrior in the world is marching on Rome with an army that has already turned entire cities to ash. The Western Roman Empire is on the brink of collapse. The emperor has fled and the city is defenseless until one man rides out to meet this unconquerable conqueror. He's unarmed. He is the Pope. What happens next becomes legend, because according to multiple historical accounts, Attila the Hun, the Scourge of God himself, took one look at Pope Leo, saw something that terrified him, and ran with his entire army behind him. Some say that he saw saints, angels with flaming swords. Others say it was saints hovering in the air, threatening death if he attacked. No, this isn't the Cosmere. This is history, and it's weirder than fantasy. 452 AD, the Western Roman Empire is dying. This isn't the Rome of gladiators and conquering legions. This isn't the Rome that brought about prosperous republics. This is Rome in its final desperate decades. It is on life support. The population has collapsed from over millions to maybe 100,000. Barbarian tribes are tearing through the empire's borders, famine and plague ravage what's left, and the imperial government is fractured, corrupt, and largely defunct. And now, Attila the Hun is coming. And if you don't know who Attila was, well, you should go read some history. But imagine the most terrifying military leader you've ever read about in a fantasy novel. Imagine Conan the Barbarian twisted to dark ends, and make him real. Attila commanded a massive coalition of Huns and Germanic tribes that had already devastated Eastern Europe and the Balkans. He was called the Scourge of God, divine punishment made flesh. Cities would often surrender at the mere rumor of his approach. And in 451 AD, Attila invaded Gaul, now modern-day France. He was defeated at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains, but it wasn't a decisive loss. He retreated, regrouped, and the next year, he invaded Italy. His armies tore through the northern cities. Aquila was utterly destroyed, so thoroughly that it never recovered. Milan fell, Pavia burned. Everywhere Attila went, it was utter devastation. And now he was marching towards Rome. Emperor Valentinian III, of course, did what any brave leader would do in that situation. He ran. He fled to Ravenna, leaving Rome defenseless, taking his armies with him. There was no one to stop Attila. No fortification strong enough to hold him at bay. The city was utterly doomed, until Pope Leo I came into play. Now, Leo had been pope since 440 AD, and by this point, roughly 11-12 years. He was a theologian, a diplomat, a man of faith in an age of apocalyptic fear, and when the emperor abandoned Rome, the church stepped up. Leo was tasked with leading a delegation to negotiate with Attila to somehow convince the unconquerable warlord to spare the city. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. But Leo went anyways. The meeting took place somewhere near the Mincio River, close to Mantua in northern Italy. Historical accounts vary on the exact location. Some say it was the Po River, but what matters is this. Pope Leo I, accompanied by a few Roman officials, like the consul of Venus and prefect Tragitus, rode out to meet Attila the Hun face to face. Unarmed, outnumbered, face to face. Unarmed, outnumbered, utterly vulnerable. And that's when the strange things happened. Our earliest source is Prosper of Aquitaine, a contemporary chronicler and a papal secretary who was alive when this occurred. He wrote around 455 AD, so just a few years after the event, or i.e. within living memory, and Prosper records it in his Epitoma Chronicon. Attila, king of Huns, entered Italy to destroy it, but Leo the Pope, trusting in the help of God, went out to meet him beyond the Po, at the old Ambrosian way, and there, after a conversation, Attila turned back with his followers. And that's it. No details about what was said, or even miracles, just that they talked, and Attila left. But later sources tell a very different century. We have Paul the Deacon, writing in the 8th century in his Historia Longibodorum, that he adds a crucial detail. According to him, Attila didn't just decide to leave after a pleasant conversation. He saw something. 2 figures appeared in the sky, priests of venerable aspects. the saints, Peter and Paul, the patron apostles of Rome. They hovered in the air just above Pope Leo, invisible to the Pope, but holding swords and radiating divine power, made visible to Attila. And they threatened the warlord that if he disobeyed Leo and attacked Rome, they would strike him down. Now Attila, the man who never feared any earthly enemy, was terrified, and he withdrew his army immediately. The Liber Pontificalis, compiled between the 6th and 9th century, also credits divine intervention, describing Leo's eloquence and the help of God in turning Attila away. Later hagiographies, stories of saints' lives, embellish even more. Some claim that Attila confided to his advisors afterward that he saw a man in priestly robes wielding a sword of fire, and others describe him having seen an entire angelic host, an army that defended Rome, visible only to the Hun king. And in 1514, the Renaissance artist Raphael immortalized the scene in his fresco, the meeting of Leo the Great and Attila. The painting shows Leo on horseback, calm and resolute, while Attila recoils in terror. Above them, St. Peter and Paul descend from the clouds, armed and ready to strike. It's a powerful image, one well worth visiting. And for centuries, it was accepted as historical fact. Pope Leo saved Rome through divine intervention. But here's where it gets complicated. Did Attila see a vision? Or is this a legend built on top of a more mundane truth? The contradictions are significant, and they really are kind of against the vision. Prosper of Aquitaine, writing closest to the actual event, makes no mention of any supernatural occurrence. He emphasizes Leo's faith and negotiation skills, but nothing about angels or apostles. The vision only appears in sources written centuries later, during the medieval period when the church was actively building its more mythological power. So, what really happened? We have Theory 1, divine intervention. The traditional Catholic view holds that God literally sent St. Peter's and Paul to protect Rome. This aligns with their Christian worldview at the time, where major events were seen as direct acts of divine will. And it ties into Matthew 16:18, where Jesus tells Peter, "The gates of hell shall not prevail against the church." And in this interpretation, Rome was saved by a miracle. And honestly, people at the time believed it, and in an age of collapsing empires and existential dread, it was an idea that brought comfort, levity, and proof that God hadn't abandoned them. Then we have Theory 2, diplomacy and bribery. Modern historians lean towards more practical explanations, that Leo likely paid Attila off. Some sources mention tribute, possibly as much as 12,000 pounds of gold, which is a staggering sum, but cheaper than losing Rome and the lives of her inhabitants. Beyond money, Attila had a practical reason to withdraw. His army was overstretched, supply lines were thin, disease and starvation were spreading through his ranks, and the Eastern Roman Empire was threatening to attack from the rear if he stayed in Italy. And it was still fresh that Attila had already lost at the Catalonian plains the years before, proving that he wasn't invincible. Now, Leo's reputation and eloquence may have genuinely swayed him. Attila was known to respect omens and avoid unnecessary risks. So if the Pope presented compelling arguments, combined with a generous bribe, and carried the weight of his office, it is entirely plausible that Attila simply decided Rome was no longer worth the trouble. Theory 3 is a little bit more cynical, propaganda and myth-making. The vision could be pure invention. All of these visions could have just simply been pure invention, added later to glorify the church. But the papacy's power was rising as imperial authority crumbled. Pope Leo had also negotiated with the Vandals in 455 AD when they sacked Rome, convincing them not to burn the city or massacre the civilians. The church needed to present itself as Rome's protector, the new authority in a world where emperors fled and were seen as increasingly irrelevant. So adding a miraculous vision to the story not only elevated Leo, but made him into a divine instrument, making the church essential, sacred, and untouchable. And then we have superstition and psychology, which really sits in the middle ground. You see, Attila was a very superstitious man. Hun culture involved shamans, omens, rituals, and Leo may have staged something. He might have used the meeting setting, even perhaps near a sacred site, to create an atmosphere of dread. Maybe natural phenomena occurred, strange cloud formations, light effects, that Attila interpreted as divine warnings. Or maybe Leo carried himself with such conviction, such calm authority in the face of death, that Attila was genuinely unnerved. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is absolute fearlessness. Attila left no written record. Hun culture was oral, and after his death in 453 AD, just a year later, reportedly from a nosebleed on his wedding night, his empire fragmented. No one from his side of the story survived to tell it. What we do know is this: Attila withdrew, Rome was spared, and the papacy's prestige soared. Pope Leo I became Leo the Great, and one of only two popes ever given that title during their lifetime. Whether through an actual vision, clever diplomacy, bribery, or superstition, one unarmed man stopped the most feared conqueror in the world. And that is a miracle. And a miracle doesn't have to be grand to be divine intervention. So, either way, bluff, miracle, divine intervention, it is still an extraordinary tale. In 452 AD, Pope Leo rode out to face Attila the Hun, giving us a story to cross times and chasms, a masterclass in myth-making that any author or reader would love to see in their fantasy books. So if this story amazed you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales where the real world defies belief. Share this with someone who loves history's most bizarre moments. And if you want to explore these themes in fiction, if you love fantasy of unlikely heroes, divine intervention, and that thin line between myth and reality, check out my fantasy books at isaacyorks.com or sign up for my mailing list to receive a new short story and bookish update every month. Thanks for watching. Keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, the truth is always weirder than fantasy.